the Traffic and Parking Advisory Board to order. Good afternoon and welcome. The Traffic and Parking Advisory Board reviews items of interest regarding parking and traffic items. We are an advisory board, and our favorable recommendation today will go before the Oshkosh Common Council. The council can either accept or reject any recommendation from this board. If you don't agree with our decision, you can discuss that item with any council member. If the board does not recommend an item, a common council member may in fact sponsor a new ordinance regarding that same item. All items do require 2 readings before the common council. The first reading will take place on Tuesday, May 28th at 6 p.m., and you will be allowed to comment on the item at that time, though no council action will be taken. On Tuesday, June 11th at 6 p.m., the item will be on a second reading, at which time the council will take action. You will again be allowed to speak at that time. For this afternoon's meeting, I will read each agenda item, at which time, if you'd like to speak, please step up to the podium and give your name and address. I do ask that you keep your comments pertinent to the agenda item. The item will then come back to this board for discussion and ultimate action. Please call the roll.
Staple,
Here.
Weinschneider,
Here.
Becker,
Here.
Christensen,
Here.
Haas,
Here.
Berman,
Here.
Szynski,
Here.
Which brings us to approval of minutes. First item on our agenda.
I'll approve the minutes as mailed out.
Second.
I actually do have one clerical correction. In looking at the minutes, it would appear, thank him for his service the week before, but that Mr. Haas called the meeting to order at 4 p.m. last time. So if we could just actually get that adjusted.
okay, yes.
Again, forgive my my OCD. Which then brings us to, I guess we need to vote, sorry. I would actually ask that the minutes be amended to strike Steve's name and put mine in its place.
Second.
Guess we have to vote on the amendment. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion in chief, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Brings us to the conclusion of approval of minutes, which brings us to public comment. The board has adopted a public participation policy which provides 15 minutes for general public comment on a first-come, first-served basis. Citizens must provide their name and address and may speak on matters related to traffic issues within the authority of this board. Statements should be addressed to board members and not to city staff or other persons. Items that are on the agenda should be addressed at the time the item is read and not during this period for public comment. Statements are limited to 3 minutes, and citizens may only provide comment once unless special permission is granted by this board. Is there anyone that would like to avail themselves of that opportunity? So basically, non-agenda items. Seeing none, that brings us to new business. If it pleases the board, I've had a request to alter the order in which we're going to address these issues. If it pleases the board, can we move item
problem.
6 to the first spot
Sure.
on the agenda? Any objection?
Fine.
All right, which then gets us to a request for a stop sign at the intersection of Greenfield Trail and Abbey Avenue. Current condition, Abbey Avenue yields to Greenfield Trail.
Now, yeah, this was a request from the last board meeting. So I did some research on this, and the citizen that requested it's here. And the concern was that vehicles on, and I'll pull it up while we're talking here. But the vehicles on Abbey Avenue are reportedly driving fast and are not necessarily complying with the yield sign, which was causing some crashes and near misses. And then there was also a report that it's difficult to see oncoming traffic on Greenfield Trail at the intersection. So the request for stop sign was to make sure the traffic on Abbey Avenue comes to a complete stop, to check for oncoming traffic before entering the intersection. So as we normally do, I looked at the warrants for converting a yield sign to a stop sign. And the warrants are 3 or more right angle accidents in a 12-month period, or 5 or more right angle accidents in a 2-year period, and 3,000 or more vehicles per day entering the intersection, and/or a severe sight distance problem. So I looked at the crash records at the intersection for the last 5 years. There's only been one crash, and that was the one this year on April 8th, which was a westbound vehicle which violated the yield sign. So it doesn't meet the crash warrant. I didn't do the traffic volume, but on a local street like that, it's highly unlikely that it would get to 3,000 vehicles a day. We're probably looking at a couple hundred. I did go out and look at it in the field, and I'll pull it up here in a second, but there's a possible sight distance issue, with where the houses are. You do need to slow down by the yield sign to adequately see oncoming traffic. So the location of the house and some landscaping features block some view. However, if you slow down and yield like you're supposed to, the view is pretty good. So the interesting thing here, is this is a good case. Even with the yield sign, it's in a residential neighborhood where motorists don't generally expect to see them on a regular basis. So that's kind of always the counter argument about putting yield and stop signs where they're not warranted, is because then people don't expect them and they have a tendency to disobey them more frequently. So we could replace the yield sign with a stop sign. However, I don't know that that's going to solve the issue here. I think you're still probably going to have some violations there, just because it's, like I said, it's kind of it's in a residential area where you're not necessarily expecting one. So that would be my concern, and I'll pull it up here. Greenfield Trail.
Give Mr. Collins a second to get that pulled up, but if there's anyone that wishes to speak to this issue at this point from the public, this would be your opportunity. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Collins?
So here's the yield sign right there.
Do we have the history of how long that yield sign's been there, Jim?
I don't know.
I guess I'm just wondering if maybe we just put a few orange, we've done that kind of when we put
Flags.
new signs up at times that, to kind of re-alert the citizens in the area that is a yield sign there. I mean, if we've only had one accident, I don't think a stop sign, the criteria is definitely doesn't warrant it, but at the same time, we don't want any accidents, but, maybe if we just highlight the fact that that yield sign is there, that might, eliminate some of the problems. Are there other yield signs as you go down this street, or is this like out in the middle?
I believe that's
like
the
there's
only
one the
yield.
next
correct me
block.
if I'm-
Okay.
You want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Step to the podium.
Sure.
Mike
Yeah.
Highmark, 2340 Abbey. So if you, Jim, if you turn and go the other direction towards the east, there's actually another yield where Abbey meets Graceland
Okay.
as well.
See, I'm looking for that consistency.
Yep.
Because if that isn't, then that's a problem in
So
and
the
of
funny
itself.
part is, people are more apt to stop and yield at this one
Okay.
than they are even by Abbey and Greenfield. So for an example, today's Tuesday, so Thursday last week, again, I was at home. A red minivan went flying through there and almost got T-boned by the UPS truck because she wasn't paying attention, never yielded, and just went through it. So it's on a daily basis, I hear horns going through there. Steve, I do like that idea as well with the
Just maybe
the
for a
cross
while. Yeah.
orange flags maybe or something.
Yeah, and I guess that's my dilemma. I think that part of the issue is they're not expecting a yield sign there, and that's why, some people might miss it. Whereas I think Greenfield Trail's a little busier, so.
Correct.
I
I
mean,
look
that's-
at Greenfield Trail the same way I look almost at Graceland as far as the traffic heading north and south.
Okay.
But they're more apt, like I said, to stop or yield at the Graceland side of it than they are on.
Sure.
Can you back off that intersection towards, keep going back.
Try.
Oh, not quite that far. What I was.
He's in
what I-
Fond du Lac now.
What I was looking to determine is if there's actually a signpost
space.
further back that we could actually make something a little more permanent in terms of yield ahead.
Is there any kind of signs that's, do we put
The flags are
residential
gonna-
signs that say yield ahead or anything like that in
They
neighborhoods? We
exist,
don't.
though.
Yeah, I believe they exist.
I mean, I just see that as an improvement on your idea, Mr.
Yeah.
Herman, because the flags are gonna fade and,
Sure.
but I was looking for a means to put them up that already existed.
Yeah, there's, I don't see any utility poles close enough to there.
Probably underground utilities?
They're all underground.
Underground.
The only pole would be on the corner of Greenfield and Abbey, but like kitty corner from where you were looking, a light pole that's right
Oh,
there.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
you
wouldn't
can
work.
see it.
That's too far.
I mean, we could try to flag it and see if that
I-
helps.
It's worth a shot. I mean, I'd hate to put a stop sign in the middle and then, you know, if that's the only one that's gonna be in that whole kind of area, that's gonna create maybe more of a problem than if we just alert citizens of the fact that yield sign is there, that they need to yield at this intersection, be aware of it. Because it appears, as you said, that people are flying through there because they don't realize there's a yield sign, they don't expect it. But if there's yield signs up and down that street, I would think that they'd be, I mean,
The only stop that is on, so if you keep going down Abbey, once you hit West Haven,
Yeah,
that's the only stop sign.
okay, all right.
And to Jim's point, what he was saying before, if you slow down at Abbey and Greenfield, yes, you do have good sight lines. It's when you're flying through there that
You don't.
you don't.
And it's posted 25, right? It's not a
Correct, well,
30?
that's a suggestion. I know, yeah.
Yeah. Um, I don't know what anybody else thinks.
And I'm not opposed to the flagging idea either, I think, just to Jim's, or to Steve's point, you know, bringing visibility to it.
I think that's the short, simplest solution for now. And if we, and we only had one accident that the police department's reported, so it's not a high accident area. We don't get, do you get a lot, Captain, do you get a lot of complaints in that area?
I have not had any in that specific area.
Okay. Yeah, I know you get complaints all the time, but sometimes your pin markers say more in one area than another. Okay. Well, I guess if we're making a recommendation here, I'd recommend that we flag it for several months, see if that reduces. If he comes back and says, you know what, it's still happening, then we have to take a different look at it. That'd be my
What
recommendation.
what would be the next step?
Well, it would be a stop sign.
Four-way stop?
I don't know about four-way, it'd be a
Yeah,
two-way for
two-way.
sure. Because it just doesn't warrant,
No.
Yeah, it's not even close to that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with trying that. It's a good idea, but
you know,
it's not close to.
yeah, and it definitely wouldn't warrant a four-way stop.
Yeah.
So that
No,
sounds
I
to
was
me
just saying
suspicious.
down the road.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's always that possibility, Ross, that we could do something like that, but again, you want to.
Go incrementally.
Yeah, step one would be flag it for now, step two would be stop sign, step three might be four-way stop, if it continues to create a problem.
So as I was saying, it sounds suspiciously like an amendment, Mr. Herman.
Yeah, I'll make an amendment to the request for a stop sign to, at this point, put orange flags up to alert citizens that there's a yield sign ahead. And if that doesn't work, maybe, down the line we could go. So the amendment would be to flag it at this point instead of putting a stop sign up.
Second.
Any discussion on the amendment? No? Then I will call the roll on the amendment.
Staple,
Aye.
Schneidler,
Aye.
Becker,
Aye.
Christensen,
Aye.
Haas,
Aye.
Herman,
Aye.
Szynski,
Aye.
carried 7-0.
Please.
You bet.
Well, we're
Thank
actually
you.
not technically finished because that
Oh,
was
yeah.
just the amendment.
That was the
But,
amendment, right. Now we got to vote on the.
Any discussion on the motion as amended? Seeing none, call the roll.
Staple,
Aye.
Schneider,
Aye.
Becker,
Aye.
Christensen,
Aye.
Haas,
Aye.
Herman,
Aye.
Szynski,
Aye.
Thank you. Which brings us to the old number one, which is a request for no parking on Otter Street, south side from Main Street, 244 feet east of State Street. Current condition, no parking south side from State Street to Main Street. No parking south side from State Street to 30 feet east of State Street. No parking south side from 72 feet east of State Street to 244 feet east of State Street. 15-minute parking south side from 30 feet east of State Street to 72 feet east of State Street.
Yeah, I'll make this one simple. I won't pull it up unless
Oh,
you
sure, I
got
read it.
questions. But basically, all it is when when we reconstructed Otter Street, the post office then put their mail drop-off boxes in basically where there used to be 15-minute parking. You know, the 30 feet east of State Street to the 72 feet east. So basically, what we're doing is we're just making that a no parking zone. That's really the only change. And there are 3 mailboxes there, which I don't know why, but surprisingly, a citizen brought it to my attention because somebody parked right in front of the mailboxes, and he was an older gentleman. He's like, well, I was trying to drop off my mail, and there's a car there. So I said, well, yeah, we can take care of that. I'm sure that was an unintended oversight when the road got reconstructed.
Anyone wish to comment? Anyone on the board wish to comment? Need a motion and a second.
Move it.
Second.
Questions, comments, concerns, Mr. Collins or anyone else? Call the roll on agenda 1.
Staple.
Aye.
Wunschneider.
Aye.
Becker.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Herman.
Aye.
Szynski.
Aye.
Carried 7-0.
Agenda 2, a request for no parking in the cul-de-sac between Lake Point Drive and Sunnybrook Drive where the generator and lift station are currently located. Current condition, unrestricted parking.
Okay, and this is a citizen request. I believe they're here. So basically, there's a generator and lift station in kind of a cul-de-sac, and there are vehicles that have been attempting to park there, and when they do that, then that restricts the access for the residents that live there to get in and out of their driveway. And we'll pull it up here. So, right here, and it's not wide enough to be able to park there. Again, I don't know, you would think common sense you wouldn't park there, but it's like 15 feet wide, so there's really not enough room for a vehicle to travel and park.
Makes sense to me.
Is it just that one section by the pointer there, or the whole?
So we would just put like a no parking sign, somewhere around here and over here. So you basically can't park in there. I mean, you can still park on Sunnybrook, that wouldn't be a problem. It's just basically this cul-de-sac. I don't know if do you have anything you guys want to add, or?
If you could step to the podium, I apologize.
Kevin McCarthy, 262 Lake Point Drive. I'm not the citizen that made the request. She's not here.
Okay.
I guess it's a public issue now, but this is really an issue between 2 neighbors. I live in the condominium opposite that, where you said you wanted to put the no parking sign.
Over here?
Correct.
Okay.
I don't want a no parking sign. If you want to paint the curb yellow, I'm fine with that. You're right, this is common sense that nobody should park there. But if the police want it to be black and white, that you should park here or shouldn't park here, I can see why they would want the paint. I just don't want to have to trim around another sign all the time. Because that cul-de-sac is narrow and round, and you can see the vegetation, the generator, and the lift station, I would think that people could argue they didn't see the no parking sign unless you put at least 3 of them, because they're gonna, as you approach in a car, the vision of the signs is gonna be blocked by that vegetation. Whereas a yellow curb is clear to anyone pulling up to it. So I really don't care whether you restrict parking or not. I just don't wanna have to trim around a no parking sign.
And I guess asking Jim or somebody on the board if we were to put a no parking sign up in front of the generator in the middle that said no parking cul-de-sac, would that work just as well?
Possible. How often are cars parked there?
Whenever a certain neighbor has a party.
Oh, so this is a problem.
Okay.
I was gonna say, I mean, I don't know, like,
Well,
why
I
would you
guess-
park in there?
But what is our ordinance on no parking? I mean, putting a sign in an island,
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think that's an enforceable situation for the police department.
Oh, well, it's,
It's either gotta be,
It's gotta-
it has to be a distance, like you said, like you have it here. You either have to restrict the no parking in that circle part of the cul-de-sac. Just putting in a sign or painting a curb doesn't give enforcement to the police department.
in order to be.
If a citizen does
yeah.
call and complain. you
In
have
order to
have-
be enforced, it has to be properly signed
Correct.
and in the city ordinance.
Correct. I agree, common sense says you don't park there, but if there's an issue because of activity in there, then I don't like to have an intersection too, and I don't want to go, I have to go around signs too, but I think if we want to solve this problem, we have to properly post it, properly mark it so that the police department has some authority if there's a complaint or they are in the area that they can take legitimate law enforcement action.
And usually we try to put signs like on, like near the, like on the property line, or, we try to locate them best we can to not inconvenience citizens as we can, but obviously that's not always possible. We do what we can.
Well, I think it's, that even if there is a neighbor, kind of a neighbor dispute issue over this, I still think that to properly do it, if we're gonna do it at all, we have to put appropriate signage so it can be in the ordinance appropriately and enforceable appropriately.
100% agree.
No other way around it.
Well, I mean, who's the generator belong to? That's the other question, because if it's not city property.
That's city.
Is it? Okay, I mean, I figured, but still, even from a maintenance perspective, that poses a challenge.
It could if they need to get into it
Yeah.
or get to it,
Yeah.
big equipment or something.
And again, while I appreciate your not wanting to get your weed eater and trim around a pole, believe me, I have quite a few in the terrace at my house. It's no fun, but by the same token, painting a curb is a ongoing issue. Sign will last for.
Could I make one other point?
Sure, absolutely.
The entire problem exists from that, if you could pan back a little bit, that yellow sign that's where it indicates to turn left. From that point to your left is the issue where the neighbor has an issue. So if you wanted no parking there, if you would pan back the other way, there is no parking problem on the green terrace that you see there.
Over here.
That one?
Right. So I don't feel that there needs to be no parking there. It's never been an issue.
So, go spin around again, Jim, to about 9 o'clock. The curve sign. Could we put a sign right on that same pole as the curve sign? No parking from here, or between driveways. I've seen that sign around town multiple times.
If I could just interject.
Sure.
Because if there's no parking posted there, common sense would tell me that the problem person would park where you're saying there's.
Unintended consequence.
I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
but because that driveway, the one that's black, that's 5 car widths wide, we have room in our driveway to maneuver around any problem, obstacle. The city parks and blocks us all the time. So we're maneuvering around the city trucks already. It's the city that's parking there. So we can maneuver around that. I don't anticipate a problem even with a neighbor.
But between those next two driveways, it looks like you could fit a car in there.
Yeah,
That would also be a problem.
I think the problem's right here, between these driveways, and then maybe to a lesser extent here. But I would think, yeah, I would think the no parking's probably gotta go this way towards the cul-de-sac. Because you could probably park here, I would assume. This one here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I understand that it's probably hard to get in and out of that drive. Well, same with this one, I would assume, if you're gonna go out that way.
Well, not to further complicate this, but do we need to post it in both directions? No parking? Because if we post it on the residential side, do we not need to post it on the generator side? Because to Captain Kaiser's point, if you're not gonna let me park on the outside, I'll park on the inside. Again, I'm playing devil's advocate, but I could see that happening as well.
Well, if you could probably make the sign no parking in the cul-de-sac period, and then that takes care of both sides of the road.
Right. Yeah, that's
Well,
what
but then it's not visible from both sides. You'd have to post it,
Well, you're
you'd
gonna-
have to post it in both directions.
Yeah,
'Cause I would look.
it could be
to
front, back signs. on
The
both.
resident to let us know, but do people go the wrong way through the curve? I find that surprising, but
The road, the cul-de-sac itself isn't narrow enough. If there's a car parked there, another car can't
oh, right,
get through.
I'm just suggesting that someone may come
They
down,
would, they would avoid the cul-de-sac altogether. It's not truly a cul-de-sac, it's,
right, but if that, again, I don't even know who it is, but that neighbor decides you're not gonna let me park in front of my own house, I'll park in the inside of the cul-de-sac as opposed to the outside of the cul-de-sac if you,
So you
Getting-
could take one sign, front and back,
yeah.
no parking cul-de-sac period. Call it a day. It would just be how far back do you want to have it from the cul-de-sac? Or that turnaround, like you said, it's not really a true.
So I guess the question at hand is, do we want no parking in the cul-de-sac, and then we can kind of figure out where the best place to put the signs is.
And that's the request. It basically says no parking in the cul-de-sac between Lake Point Drive and Sunnybrook Drive.
Else, throw their 2 cents in. Need a motion and a second.
Make a motion to move it forward.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought he was speaking on your behalf. I apologize.
No, I'm Diane McCarthy, and I'm at 260 Lake Point Drive. And I guess, hearing what you've said, I would request then that the parking, the no parking sign be located north of that driveway, north of 262.
So where the mailbox is, there?
Right.
Dave?
If we have to have a sign. Where the long straight part is in front of my house. And I don't see any reason that should be no parking.
So which house are you?
I'm in that house.
The brown one?
On the south side, Kevin is in the north side.
You're on this one?
Right,
Oh, you're in the duplex. Is that a duplex or?
the condo,
Oh,
yeah.
it's kind of.
I guess you would have to post it right where that generator starts, I guess. If you use that as a starting point, no parking forward of that generator. So like right where your arrow is now, right in that general area, you just let people that live in the condominiums, because this is kind of the West Haven issue with the parking issue, if you remember that. People that don't have a lot of room in their driveways for people to park need street parking, so we would want to make it as small of a no parking area, so where the generator kind of parallels to the side, to the curb and gutter, would be where there'd be no parking, I guess. You know, from that driveway, you just,
Right.
yeah, kind of like right in front of that one, and then if you went on the other side from it, well, right in there too. And that would be the issue, because that way people who are attending functions at those houses in that circle can park fairly close, and that's not asking a whole lot for them to walk very far. They can't park in the driveway.
Is that
Okay.
reasonable?
Smallest area as possible.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So use that generator curb and gutter as kind of your, so it's really only affecting basically around the generator area. I think that would solve what
Yeah.
what the
Yeah,
request
we'll do the
is.
best we can with the sign.
And it's, the request is still the same, the cul-de-sac,
Yep.
so I don't think we need an amendment to
Nope,
that.
I don't think so either.
Just where
Put
Mr.
those-
Collins feels it's best to put it.
Anyone else on the board? Seeing no other comments, call the roll on Agenda 2, please.
Staple.
Aye.
Juan Schneider.
Aye.
Becker.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Herman.
Aye.
Kuzinski.
Aye.
Carried 7-0.
Agenda 3, a request for no parking on Custer Ave, north side from Eastman Street to 50 feet west. Current condition, no parking restrictions.
This is, basically it's an issue with the bus. So Route 2 goes north on Eastman, then turns left on Custer. So this is the former Waite Rug Factory, so the Housing Authority recently redeveloped it, which is great. However, we have a bus stop right here. So the bus comes down Eastman this way, turns left here. And this is now, curb here. So there's vehicles that are parking like right in this intersection here. So the request is to make, it's already no parking 50 feet from the bus stop, but to make 50 feet this way, no parking, just so the bus can clear the corner.
Any comments, questions, concerns from the public? Anyone wish to comment? Board members?
And I think that the Housing Authority is okay with, because they're the ones that brought it to my attention. I know Mr. Peschel's on the council. He called and said, hey, I can see the bus coming, and they're having a hard time making this corner, so. And they are, because they've been calling in about it, saying that they're having a tough time when a car is parked there.
Motion and a second.
Move it.
Second.
Last call for any comments, questions, or concerns on 3. Seeing none, call the roll.
Staple.
Aye.
Juan Schneider.
Aye.
Becker.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Herman.
Aye.
Kuzinski.
Aye.
Carried 7-0.
Agenda 4, a request for no parking on Court Street, east side from CP Avenue to 50 feet north. Current condition, 4-hour parallel parking.
This again was when, so when Court Street was reconstructed, there used to be angled parking, and now there is parallel parking. So this again, we're just asking that, gotta get my bearings here, but when the bus makes the, again, they make a left-hand turn from CP onto Otter, and when they're doing that, sometimes there's a car that parks like right up to the, or not the same car, but vehicles park right up to the corner, and when they do that, the bus is having a hard time making the left turn. So we're just asking again to restrict that 50 feet, so when the bus turns left, it's clear. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get on this picture here.
Makes sense to me.
But it's basically, so it's right where the fire department is, so the fire trucks can still park there, and it's only a couple stalls. Let me see if I can get a better view here.
Motion and a second.
Move it.
Second.
Anyone? Call the roll on 4.
Staple.
Aye.
Juan Schneider.
Aye.
Becker.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Herman.
Aye.
Kuzinski.
Aye.
Carried 7-0.
Agenda 5, a request for relaxed overnight parking in the 400 East and library parking lots 4 to 6 times a year for Adventure Games overnight events. Current condition, no parking from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m.
All right, this is a request from the owner of Adventure Games. They're currently working on writing an offer to purchase the former Paper Tiger building at 408 North Main Street. He's here, so he can probably explain this better than I can, but one of the contingencies in the sale is that city parking would be available overnight 4 to 6 times a year for events from midnight until 6 a.m. As you know, we currently prohibit overnight parking in the, basically the non-permit stalls, I'll say. So currently, there's no parking in any city parking lots from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. unless you are in a lease stall or a permit stall with a valid permit. And the reasoning generally for that is allows for maintenance, and then it also prevents junked vehicles, and there's some statistics as well as far as abandoned vehicles and crime and those types of things. So generally, if there's a special event that happens, once or twice a year, and it's like, say it's there's something going on at the Grand where they need to do something for practice for a short period of time, and it happens once or twice a year, we can relax parking, and then I usually coordinate with the police department and just say, we got this event going on, can we relax parking for a couple hours? And it's usually not a problem for something real sporadic here and there. However, that's where I'm kind of struggling with this. If we're talking about multiple times a year, do we want to open up that precedent? So I guess maybe the owner can explain a little bit better what he's looking for.
Please, name and address.
My name is Teddy Alekos. Currently, we're at 927 Oregon Street. We're looking to purchase the building at 408 North Main. One of our, one of the legs of our three-legged stool is a game called Magic the Gathering. It's a card game where you're a wizard, you got to defeat the other wizard. So it's one of the biggest products we have. And several times a year, they have what's called a pre-release. So we're able to run a tournament and sell product before the actual release. But so they only let you do it on 2 days, the Saturday and the Sunday. So Friday at midnight, the first event starts. And that's the one that would last to 6 a.m. So we were looking to find a solution so our customers could park for that event and not get ticketed.
What time do you start your activities usually? 8, 9 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night?
Normally, it's Friday nights, 6 and 6:30. The card tournament starts. But again, this one's held several times a year, and they let us run it on the Saturday and the Sunday of whatever weekend they choose. And so that Saturday, we start at 12:01 a.m. It's a very popular way to hold. They let us run up to I think 7 tournaments over the weekend. So to fit those in, you start at midnight or 12:01 on Saturday. And it is by far the most popular event. And that's where we lock in a lot of those sales and pre-orders for that particular product. So if we lose that, again, we'd be taking out one of the legs of a three-legged stool. So
How many cars would you think you would have?
right now we average between 40 and 70 people for that midnight event. A lot of people do carpool. We do get a lot of out-of-towners. So I'm guessing just between 20 to 40, 50 cars. So I've already reconnoitered the area, and that's that 400 East parking lot and the library parking lot, ample space in the no parking 2 to 5, of course. And that's why we're here, to see if we could make some arrangement to make this go through.
And somebody else is choosing the dates because it's a release or something?
Correct.
So you have no control over what dates it's going to be?
Correct. The manufacturer chooses the dates.
How much advance notice do you get for those?
Say 2 months,
Yeah,
typically.
8 to 10 weeks usually.
How long does it take you to turn around a request for relaxed parking if these came through as a request?
I guess I'll look at Captain Kaiser, that doesn't take long. I mean, we just work in conjunction with
Whenever we get
the police department.
Okay. So if they were able to, because I'm concerned about the precedent too.
Right.
Because the next thing, it could be a bar, or it could be somebody else that wants this. And so I guess what I'm wondering is if they could turn around a request relatively quickly and you don't unreasonably withhold them, that's true?
Right.
Okay, so, and you had maybe not the full 2 months, but you had 7 weeks. Would that be enough time so you could plan your events and advertise them?
Typically, yes. There are some other manufacturers who are very secretive about their release schedules. And we have in the past had midnight events for those, but they're kind of uncommon.
I guess I'd like to see it maybe a designated parking lot, not have, you got all those businesses in the one parking lot, but don't really have any businesses in the library lot. So if they're kind coming for this event, maybe they're given a designated lot. Make it easier for the police and for the traffic enforcement people, because they know that this lot for this event is relaxed parking. But if you got them spread all behind Oblio's and behind Bar 430 and some of the other bars, and then somewhere across the street, then you gotta relax it for everybody that's in those lots that are in general parking. But if you have a designated lot for this event that's within, like I say, the library lot, if that's big enough, maybe those people are told that you will go to this lot and you'll get that relief, and then the police department and transportation can work it out, that this is a designated lot, these cars are gonna be there for this event. Because word of mouth's gonna get around too, and then all of a sudden people are parking in there that aren't even part of his event, and then you get that problem, because they're gonna say, well, I'm just gonna leave it here because I'm not gonna get ticketed. And that
Yeah.
creates that precedent.
Right, yeah, exactly, right. And so then my other question is, are all bets off if there's a snow emergency called? So that you can plow the lot?
Right.
Well, yeah, if there is a snow emergency, our event will either be small or canceled.
Depends on when it starts, though, and
Yeah.
when it actually starts to snow.
Right, but usually when you call,
There's
if
some
you get
word.
an overnight snowstorm on a weekend, you don't usually call it until, what, Sunday night?
That I don't know,
Yeah.
because I don't do that.
Yeah, correct. But I guess I'd ask the captain again, would it be easier if there was a designated lot for this than dealing with two different lots and bouncing around with cars because of the other businesses in that district?
Sure, and I had a suggestion of contacting Downtown Bid as well, just to find out how it affects other businesses, or get their cooperation, or get them on board with the business plan to begin with.
How soon do you need to have this answer? Because I agree, that's a good idea, the Business Improvement District should weigh in on it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we have the accepted offer has us closing by June 30th. If we go beyond that date, then we're back in the negotiations.
Well, I would think that something will be accommodating. I can't give you an answer because I'm not gonna be on this board after tonight's meeting, but, it'll still come to council probably or something.
Well, Rob Kleeman's here from the Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce. I don't know how much you know specifically about the bid questions that we might.
Right, well, I mean, we could certainly take it to the bid board to make them aware of what's going on. You're obviously applying for a grant with them.
Right,
and some other
correct.
things, so, the downtown bid manager is aware of this project and have been pretty supportive, obviously. We're obviously looking at some loan support as well to help the
Yes.
project, but I know this is kind of critical for you
Yes.
guys to make this happen. If you can't get this, the project probably doesn't happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to hold a gun to anybody's head, but.
And I don't think anybody on the traffic review board is looking at it that way either. I guess we're just looking at a timeline, so that all affected parties, because it does affect some of those businesses that are in that Jefferson lot right behind those businesses. So I'm just thinking, I'll wear my law enforcement hat, even though I've been long retired. It would be easier for law enforcement to know that this is a designated lot for this event, and it's really just across the street.
Yeah, it would be easier, I think, to allow parking in the library lot, obviously, because there's gonna be a little less demand than we still could have, like you said, bars or something wanting to have events, but,
Would we be able to utilize the permit parking as well as the 2 to 5?
Well, if you have any permits that your staff or you need, you can apply and get those, right?
right, yeah, you can purchase permits, but
Yeah,
you'd
not
have
worried
to
about, I'm
buy
not worried about
those.
staff, I just don't know the actual stall count for the 2 to 5 restriction in the library parking lot.
What's all the green,
If you
right?
want to
Well-
restrict it to just the library parking lot, that sounds like, an easy solution. I'm a little
It's just
concerned-
across the street.
Yeah. I'm just
Right.
concerned that there might not be enough stalls in the 2 to 5 section.
Oh, if you're looking for 40, I mean, there's.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, there's way more than that over there.
Okay,
And Teddy, we can communicate with the bid also, in advance of the event, so leading up to it, so folks know what's going on.
Sure. No, and I don't want to hold up your sale or whatever you need. I think we all agree that we can accommodate. It's just, we got other businesses to think about too, and.
I agree with you, Mr.
Setting
Herman,
payment.
but I think we might be, and again, I'm not trying to muddy the waters, but there might be a more obvious solution to this problem, and I look to you, Rob, for the answer. We've got a lot further south on Main Street that sits empty most of the time, AKA the arena lot, which arguably isn't that far away, which we don't have to worry about.
But
That's
that's,
a private
that's on the other
lot.
side of the bridge, quite a distance from
Well,
downtown.
I mean, there's
6,
shuttle
8
buses.
bucks. Well, yeah.
Everything starts and ends at the same time, does it not?
Yes, but people arrive at, anytime
Well,
from 6 PM.
The shuttle bus will be there at 11:55 to pick you up for the 12:01 start. I'm just trying to keep it in the family. I see the look on your face, Mr. Clayman. It looks like there's some wheels turning in your head, but
But that's
I see it as a win-win.
But it's a private entity too.
Well,
And
it
we can't
is.
control a private entity.
They do, but arguably, then the city and this board are out of that mix, and they're free to do what they want. They don't have to worry about
Obviously,
approvals.
the advantage in this is that it's right next to
It is. I mean,
Yeah, to be honest,
I'm looking at the precedent issue here too. I mean, a couple other people have
well, I mean,
That-
made that comment.
And that's why I was wondering if it doesn't take long to grant the special option, whatever you're calling this.
Right.
And it's not unreasonably withheld. That sounds like it might be worth it. We haven't really changed any precedent that we have, and I do like the idea of keeping it all in the library lot. And I mean, I think most of the businesses, anybody who's open past 6 o'clock, and there are quite a few on that side that are on Friday nights, that might be an issue. And the other huge issue is snow plowing, if you can't plow the lot.
If you're looking for a motion, I'll make a motion that we grant the relaxed parking, but designate it to the library lot only for relaxed parking.
second.
Technically an amendment. Is there any discussion on the amendment?
Is that granting it without
Well, it would,
anything, or is it granting within the rules that we currently have that are?
within the rules that we currently have, which is,
Because I'll vote yes if it's within the rules we currently have.
Yes.
I'm voting no if it isn't.
yes,
Yeah,
I'll add that to it, do the amendment. I'm sure Mr. Szynski will agree. But, good point.
Basically, what we'd be doing is I'd be working with the police department. You'd let me know when you're having an event. I'd work with them, say, hey, there's an event going on. Can you relax parking on the library lot just for that night? Which how often do you think this happens a year?
certainly for 4 times a year, as many as 6.
So
Once
once a quarter, something
Yeah.
like that. I think that's reasonable.
Vote on the amendment. Please call the roll if there's no other comments.
Staple,
Aye.
Schneider,
Aye.
Becker,
Aye.
Christensen,
Aye.
Oz,
Aye.
Herman,
Aye.
Szynski.
Aye.
Which then brings us to the motion in chief, which again requires a motion and a second.
Move it.
Second.
Comments, questions, concerns? Call the roll.
Staple,
Aye.
Schneider,
Aye.
Becker,
Aye.
Christensen,
Aye.
Oz,
Aye.
Herman,
Aye.
Szynski.
Aye.
Carried, 7-0.
Which then brings us to previously numbered 7, a request for bike lanes on Oakwood Road from 9th Ave to 20th Ave. Current condition, no parking both sides from 20th Ave to 9th Ave, 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays except on New Year's Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas Day.
Okay, so on Oakwood Road, we've talked about this. The board has over the years numerous times, even prior to when I was here. But now the Bike and Pedestrian Committee has this on their priority route, so they're coming forward with the request for bike lanes on Oakwood from 9th to 20th. I have a larger scale drawing of it, but I think the one in your packets is pretty good as well. But basically, Oakwood Road's 48 feet wide, and there's no parking from 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays except holidays. So you can park there if you would like, basically nights and weekends. And I did some research on this to kind of get some context. Those restrictions were enacted in 2000 after Oakwood Road was reconstructed to 48 feet wide. Oakwood Road is designated in the 2005 comprehensive plan as a collector street, which proposes a minimum pavement of 36 feet. However, the wider street was reconstructed under the 93 comprehensive plan, which called for it to be wide enough for a 4-lane street. So over the years, the plan changed for how wide the road was designated to be for a collector street. So now the current plan calls for a little bit narrower street. So anyway, that's the history of why it's a wide 48-foot road. And as I know most of you are familiar with it, it does have some familiarities to 9th Street east of 41. So it's a real wide 2-lane road. Parking is prohibited at times. At other times during the day, there's not a demand for parking. So it's a big wide road, which many people drive as a 4-lane street. So there's some similarities there. From a crash history and congestion perspective, there doesn't really seem to be a problem there. I know some citizens after we did 9th have called and asked if we could do something like that on Oakwood to kind of eliminate some of that driver confusion, whether it's a 4-lane or a 2-lane road. So there are 3 options. Some of these I kind of revised from past discussions, but basically, obviously, option 1 is you can leave it like it is, which is just a wide 2-lane road with parking allowed at some times. We could stripe it as a 4-lane road. That would require removing the on-street parking, and then we would need to stripe it accordingly. We could convert it to a 3-lane roadway, which would be like a road diet with designated bike lanes, also eliminate parking. Or we could convert it to a 2-lane road with a designated bicycle and parking lanes. So that would I would propose keeping the parking restrictions currently as they are. So we would basically, you would stripe, so it'd be 8 feet off the curb, then we would start the bike lane. We'd have the 5-foot bike lane, and that would allow for 11 feet of travel in each direction. I guess that was what I was recommending, because I think then you could still have the parking for those citizens that live there that might want it for nights and weekends if they were having guests over. And it would also give us the bike lanes, which are in the bike and pedestrian plan, and also advocated by the Bike and Pedestrian Committee. And then it would still give us 11-foot driving lane in each direction. I think it would better organize traffic overall. So that's kind of the issue, and that's my recommendation.
Anyone with a comment or concern? Step to the podium, name and address, please.
Brad Brown, 3020 Mockingbird Way. I am part of the Bike and Ped Committee, and I happen to be a resident in this neighborhood. So I got a couple questions on this one. As far as Oakwood goes, there's a couple intersections that are pretty bad for people waiting to get in and out of, and one of them is going to be Rochefield onto 20th Ave, and then also I think Montclair Place is kind of busy also coming on to Oakwood. So when you restrict it down to just 2 lanes like on option 3, what I feel is that traffic's going to get stopped trying to take a left-hand turn going into Rochefield, and it would basically cause a roadblock all the way back, or a traffic jam going back on Oakwood, because you restricted it down to just 2 lanes. And then also people trying to get out of Rochefield would have to wait till that whole traffic jam cleared up in order for them to proceed out. So I feel like that's going to be like kind of hard. But then I am on this Bike and Ped Committee, so I really like bicycles. So I do like the bike lanes. So option 2 makes the most sense for myself, as far as having a turn lane in the center that doesn't cause the traffic jam, still has the bike lanes. Other options that I don't think we explored, because this was, I just recently joined the committee, so I think some of this was before my time getting on the committee, but if you could possibly give parking on one side of the street and eliminate it on the other, and then have still 2 bike lanes, 2 drive lanes, and then 1 center turn lane. So it would be, the turn lane would be a little offset, but not right in the center. Granted, the lanes would have to come down. You'd have to come down to at least 10 feet for the turn lane, and then at least 11 feet and 11 feet for the drive lanes, and then the 4 feet for bike lanes, and then 8 feet for the 1 parking lane. So it's just one more option that could be out there. But I guess those are my concerns as far as like pulling out into traffic and waiting for traffic to get into Rouge Field.
Hi, I'm Kim Biederman. I'm the Regional Bicycle and Pedestrian Coordinator for East Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. While we cannot formally support projects or say exactly how they should be done, I do want to say that Oakwood is listed in our Regional Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. So in 2014, we adopted a bicycle and pedestrian plan that represents the urbanized areas of Calumet, Outagamie, and Winnebago counties. This looked for regional connectivity, looked for rational routes that people might want to take to get places, that people might want to use for recreation, and then looked at that regional connectivity and looked at that larger picture. Oakwood was identified in this plan as one of those connectors to move people places. And we also know that Oakwood takes you into the town of Algoma. And looking at the town of Algoma's comprehensive plan, Oakwood is also identified as one of their bicycle and pedestrian routes as well. So it would make logical sense to allow for bike lanes and multimodal transportation on Oakwood, as it would be consistent with the regional plan. It's consistent with the city of Oshkosh's bicycle and pedestrian plan, and also consistent with plans from the town of Algoma. So just wanted to say that.
Any other member of the public wish to comment?
Good afternoon, Adam Belcarelli, 1624 Western. I'm also on the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and one of the things that we just had was a real successful bike ops event this past weekend. And one of the bits of feedback I received from citizens was they want to see more bicycle infrastructure on the west side. And the more that we can do to make riding your bike around the west side safer, the happier they're going to be. And so that's one of the things that we thought was really excellent this coming up in front of you guys today, to look at that and figure out what we can do to make riding your bike along a major thoroughfare, north-south thoroughfare in town safer. So we love this plan, so that'd be excellent. Thanks.
Couple questions. Again, obviously there's jurisdictional issues here. It was already mentioned. The town of Algoma is going to play a role. And one of the questions I immediately wrote down was, what does this connect to? It's an island.
Right, does it go by the hospital, or does it
No,
stop
it doesn't.
there?
It stops at 9th Ave. So it's the bike lane to nowhere.
Well, right now, it would connect with the bike route through the West Haven neighborhood, which is, there's a signed route that goes through the West Haven neighborhood, which it's kind of in the middle of.
Which also runs
Oakwood.
north and south. So it's 4 blocks over.
Yeah, but
So-
as Ms. Bierman mentioned, it ties into the town of Algoma's plan.
Which is-
Ties into East Central's regional plan. Biggest thing I don't want to lose parking, because then we're back to that West Haven situation again, where people had the parking, lost the parking. So whatever recommendations we make, I think parking needs to stay in the mix.
Well, where I was going with this is I'm very reluctant to move forward unless we get some insight from the town of Algoma, because otherwise we're, no pun intended, spinning our wheels by doing this, because again, it goes nowhere. I mean, yes, you can go down Oakwood to West Haven, or excuse me, to 9th, and get back to West Haven and make a big loop, but there's no terminus.
Yeah, that's where.
Well, but it's still a circle. I mean,
Yeah, so what Alexa's saying is that on Newport and Oakwood, that is a signed route that goes through that West Haven neighborhood and then connects to West Haven.
which gets you back to 9th, which then again gets you back to Oakwood Road.
Well, going back to West Haven, it goes all the way to Aurora and Festival.
Yeah, because you pick up West Haven Drive.
So this is Newport here. So
Yeah.
so this is a signed bike route from Newport, which then goes down to West Haven and then can go out to 9th, and West Haven goes all the way, as you know, the bike lane's all the way to.
So,
Take a look at past Whistle to Highway 21. That is town Algoma, and it's striped to be 2 lanes.
Right.
actually, no, it's not. It's striped to be 1 lane with service
Oh, yeah,
access.
sorry, one lane with the service. But
Yeah.
It's pretty much bikes are in that all the time.
Yeah, so
We can argue about whether that's right or wrong, but it,
Right.
yeah.
So I think, yeah, so what you're saying, so what the town of Algoma has, I guess it'd be north of Witzel, is they have that painted shoulder right now, which is, I don't know if they're planning on converting that to bike lane. It sounds like maybe they are, but that's what's currently there.
Right.
But I think the bike and pedestrian plan was the plan to connect it from Newport down to West Haven, which obviously I understand, between Oakwood and Newport. Once you get here to 9th, then you would have to go on the street, obviously, from 9th to go down to West Haven either way, but it would be part of that connection.
But I think the key thing too, and I sat on the bike and ped as a council rep, you gotta start somewhere to start connecting these, and the plan is being updated, so there'll be some changes there. So I think it's important to look at the bigger piece that this, yes, it's a circle route, it kind of goes to nowhere, but within 2 to 3 years, there'll be more requests coming forward to where those bike lanes are gonna be added to the plan and added to that, and the growth of the city is to the west, all the way out to Clarabelle Road now. There's new subdivisions going in out there. So that connectivity is gonna continue to be brought forward to the different groups.
And again, I don't dispute that, Steve, but there's no certainty in it.
No, there is no
I
certainty.
mean,
I
so,
agree.
again, hence the request for some input from the town of Algoma. Does anybody know what the town of Algoma's plans are for years out?
They just, I believe, did they just finish a comprehensive plan? Or in the process with East Central?
They're in the process of updating. I'm not sure where that plan lies just yet.
But talking to their town chairman, Ben Kremenauer, we could probably, who used to be a city planner, could probably give us a pretty quick update if we wanted to wait over for one meeting. I don't know that that would hurt the committee if we got laid over to next month, this plan, to just hear from the town of Algoma.
I'm not sure about their plan, but can I just add one other
Sure.
bit to it? So the idea of a bike lane to nowhere is non-existent. That's not a thing because all of the roads, you can ride your bike on them. So by making one section of road safer, you're giving people, all you're giving them is a safer way to ride their bike for that piece of their journey. They can then take the roadway, any local road, you can ride your bike on, you have just as much lane right as any other vehicle. So it's not that they just end, like a sidewalk ends or a bridge ends. They all go to somewhere else that you can use your bike. So it's not that it doesn't connect yet, it's that we're making this one piece of that journey safer.
And I know that, just to add one other point though, with the connections, I know that the Bike and Pedestrian Committee is also interested in continuing the bike lanes south of 20th, down to Highway 44, which, that segment we'll have to address at a future point. We just don't, we wouldn't be able to get that much of it done this year, so we were just trying to look at, okay, well, what could we get done this year, that's manageable within our paint budget and within our resources, so that will probably come up at a future date too, but they are interested in getting south of 20th, all the way, basically, to connect to that industrial park and then to Highway 91/44. But, and then my last point is then like Mr. Brown said, yeah, that is a trade-off, but like Mr. Herman said, what I was thinking is, with the residents and the parking, that we might have some issues if they were gonna lose some parking there. However, I did, and then the only other thing, I did talk to the pastor at the Lutheran church there. He called today. And he said he couldn't make the meeting. He was very supportive of bike lanes. He was wondering about the parking. Although, I told him it wouldn't, if, as proposed, he would still have parking on nights and weekends. But he said they're expanding their parking lots, so he said it's probably only a couple times a year when they would have a need for on-street parking. So he said, if you go forward with the bike lanes, he said, I don't have a problem with that. We'll deal with it. He said they can park across the street on some of the side streets. So he was very supportive and said they would deal with it either way. So that was his input.
Do you have a feel what the traffic count is here in comparison to Ninth or West Haven?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can get that for you. It's
More or
not,
less?
it's less. It's less than both.
I did just pull the numbers,
Okay.
and it's, depending on what stretch of the road, where I pulled it was about 6,000 cars a day.
At Ninth, you're looking at, well, Ninth by the roundabout's extremely busy, but once you get over to where we started the bike lanes, we were at about 9,000 to 12,000 basically. So it's less than that, obviously. And I would say West Haven's probably, just off the top of my head, it's probably between that. Well, it might be close. That might be closer to Oakwood than obviously Ninth would be.
Had all the residents along this road been notified of this meeting that they might be losing their parking?
I didn't, because we're not proposing removing parking. Their notification had the request for bike lanes.
Okay.
We didn't, and that's a good point, because I always
Before
make sure
vote
I
to take
clarify
parking out,
that.
I want everybody to know.
Yeah, if you're considering that, I would want to notify them that, because this was just adding bike lanes, I would want to notify them that it's adding parking or adding bike lanes and removing parking. So if you're interested in that, then I probably should notify them that they would lose parking.
And my other question is, to your point, I can see the need to have a turn lane there if you're gonna do that and not have stuff back up. Is there enough room to have parking on at least one side, a turn lane?
The geometry of that gets a little dicey, in my opinion, because you're off-center, for one, and it was almost as if our first speaker was in my office this morning looking at the same whiteboard I was, because the queue distance trying to turn into Rougefield is going to be immense. In fact, I had a couple citizens come to me with that very concern, because if we actually put a bike lane there with parking, human behavior what it is, if someone's waiting to turn left into Rougefield, heading northbound on Oakwood Road, what's everyone going to do? Try and bounce around on the right, but we've got potential parked cars there then, and more importantly, that bike lane, which is an invitation for a problem. Because people have been ingrained with, oh, there's plenty of room there. Will that change over time? Probably, but I'm worried that first couple weeks when that bike lane's in play, if we do that. My preference, and I've made this known before, would be option one with 2 striped lanes in each direction. As was already pointed out, if you want to ride your bike on it, you are certainly free to do so, because you have full right of that lane of traffic. Whether you use it or not is your choice. So I believe it meets both needs.
But that eliminates parking. And then we're
Opportunity
going to be
cost.
in that same situation we were with West Haven, I think, if we eliminate parking.
Well,
I think if we do it on one side of the street, that might be okay, but if
and I'd be
completely
willing
eliminate it,
to consider that, but the question I would have for you, Mr. Collins, is do we have an actual parking count on there on a typical Friday night?
I
Saturday
don't,
night?
but,
I very rarely see cars
Yeah,
back there.
I mean, I basically live in
Yeah.
that neighborhood, and it's pretty rare.
But the West
Occasional
Haven one was
weekend or-
Christmas, Thanksgiving.
That's exactly.
Yep.
4th of July, when you're having a house full of people.
Which is already no
Graduation
parking
parties.
though, or is it?
Well, after 6 p.m.
At night
weekends
you
and
can
holidays.
Yeah.
you park.
Nights and
So-
weekends.
When I've seen people park there is generally like they're having graduation parties, stuff like that, picnics or whatever.
well, we know Oakwood Road's only going to get busier and busier as a feeder type street with 2 hospitals on it already. There's going to be more development in that area. Casey Meadows is expanding, so there's going to be more and more traffic in that area. So I guess and again, I'm not going to be on this committee anymore, but I think it should be laid over for discussion with Town Algoma to make sure we know what they're doing, and if they're adding any bike lanes in the township that would intersect with our bike lanes. And then maybe have a couple other look-sees at, parking on one side of the street versus both sides of the street. But the bike and pedestrian plan was approved by council, so council, without changes to it, would probably support moving forward with it, so, in some capacity or other.
I mean, we could do a road diet, which those have been successful. However, that's gonna involve removing parking as well. With 48 feet, you need 8 feet for parking. So even if we did parking on one side, that's only gonna leave you enough room for 3 lanes.
And maybe a road diet in a highly busy area isn't such a bad idea either.
Well, but then we run into the transition issues at Ninth,
Yes, you do.
because then you're back to 2 lanes.
Yep.
One solution causes another problem.
Usually does. Or we go back to the original proposal, but I don't know if there's support for the original proposal.
Yeah, you're gonna be a few feet short of being able to have parking on one side and have bike lanes. Because it's 48 feet wide, you need 10 feet, for bike lanes, so 5 feet on each side, it only gives you 38 feet. For a drive lane, you need arguably 11 feet. So if you had 3 lanes, that's 33, you're still 3 feet short of a parking lane.
Are the bike lanes on Westview 5 feet, or will be 5 feet?
Yes.
And they
No, I
shorten
thought they were
them
gonna
to
be
4 on
4
the one
feet.
portion, or?
Thought we were narrowing to 4 feet.
No, that we ended up with, let's see, I gotta go back and look.
Yeah, that's all right. Move this forward, I'll make a motion that we hold this one over to next month's meeting with further information from the Town of Algoma and possible other options. That puts it back in the lap of the Bike and Ped for one more meeting to rethink it.
Why don't you
Look at it.
second that?
Second.
Anyone want to comment on that before I call the roll on the motion to table?
I guess my only thought is if we are considering taking parking off, we really should notify people.
Right,
That's my main.
Which would allow, the layover.
so that's for so anyway, the difference between West Haven is we don't have a turn lane, and we're talking about a turn lane here. So, I guess for clarity,
Could you do the turn lane like they do on Oregon, where it's just, it appears and kind of goes back and forth, and you lose a little parking at the area of the turn lane?
So limit parking within 30 feet of the
Or
intersections?
whatever it is, to see if it'll work, so you can get, because I do worry about traffic just absolutely backing up.
yeah, I mean, that's something we could look at. I guess so you can give me a little direction on what you'd like to see, I mean, and then we can see what we can come up with. I guess the big concern is, do we want to propose, losing parking or not? I mean, and then if I'm gonna propose eliminating parking, are we doing it to create 4 lanes, or are we doing it to do like a road diet so we can have bike lanes? And then, I guess I want to make sure that we properly notice people on what we're proposing.
I guess, going back to Mr. Staples' comment, if we have designated turn lane like we did on Oregon Street, we remove some parking, but we also put parking back on. So I guess that would be, to Mr. Becker's concern about, maybe we look at taking a little parking away if we're gonna offset a turn lane so that people can get
around.
It might only be a couple spots, but it's still gonna have some impact in the area.
Which intersection are we most concerned at? Newport? Or Rougefield, I mean?
Probably know that better.
Yeah, I would think you got a couple, obviously. Rouge Field's going to be one. the other exits are from, again, kind of that Newport and Montclair Place are two big ones for people exiting.
Yeah, because that gets them back into that Casey Meadows area, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing, if I can mention quick, if you do like a turn lane by those, what happens to the bike lane there? Does it disappear? And then the biker goes into the turn, what would be the, kind of the escape route for the traffic? They dissolve that intersections, okay.
Yeah, that's gonna be a real interesting road design. I mean, from a traffic engineering standpoint, I'd prefer that we either stick with one of these three options, but we certainly I can talk with engineering staff, see if we can get creative with turn lanes and alternating parking. It's gonna be a lot.
Well, we don't want to confuse the
Different,
average
but-
citizen that uses that roadway and even people that are new to the area. So I think we have to stay consistent with one of what we have in the Oshkosh area with bike lanes. If it's, obviously one of these three things are what we consistently have in the city, correct?
Correct.
That's why you're recommending.
Yep.
So,
I mean, I think it'd get a little crazy if we're gonna do part of a bike lane, then we're gonna do a turn lane, then we're gonna have some parking and
you can't chop it up.
throughout this this is a little less than a mile stretch. That's gonna get really confusing.
That's what you kind of ended up on Bowen, with parking on one side and then on the other, and it shifts back and
Yep,
forth.
yeah, you're right.
Not a good deal.
Always put up one of those temporary stop and go lights that you have.
Yeah. No.
The motion on the table is to lay over. Any other issues or questions there? Because I'm going to call the roll on that. All right, call the roll on the motion to lay over.
Staple,
Aye.
Von Schneider,
Aye.
Becker,
Aye.
Christensen,
Aye.
Haas,
Aye.
Berman,
Aye.
Szynski.
Aye.
Which brings us to staff statements.
Just to close that out for the next meeting, what I'm gonna do then is I will invite the town of Algoma, we'll get information about their plan, and then, I'm gonna come back probably with these three alternatives again. However, when we notice at this time, I will put, potential for loss of parking so that people are aware of that, so they can come in if they'd like.
Any supporting?
All right, so the only statement so the last two meetings, we've had presentations from East Central, the first meeting, and then last meeting from one of the consultants from WISDOT on some of the accident mapping software out there. So in kind of concluding that, I did do a little bit of a lesser of a crash study than maybe some of the more extensive ones. However, I did do the basic numbers. It looks like the number of crashes in 2018 did decrease a little bit, but they're still near the historic average. Then I looked at the number of injuries and fatalities in vehicle crashes, and there were about 350 injuries, which that is on the low side. That's one of the lower numbers we've had. And I attribute that to the roundabout usage. With the additional roundabouts, you're limiting the right angle impacts are greatly reduced, which naturally will decrease your injuries. And then also vehicles have become safer, which also contributes to reduced injury rate. As well as some of the things we've done, like the road diets and things like that. Then I looked at the number of crashes with bike or pedestrians involved. The number with bicycles, I would say it's about the norm, about average. The number with pedestrians has went down a little bit. I think that some of the things that the city's invested in have had an impact, like the rectangular rapidly flashing beacons, the LED pedestrian crossing signs, and the speed boards. I think that has helped increase the safety for the bikes and pedestrians, as well as some of the things like the Continental Crosswalk painting for the mid-block crossings. We also have that hawk signal. When Main Street was reconstructed, it was made more pedestrian-friendly with the wider sidewalks and the pedestrian crossing bump outs. We also have the flags at 9th and Witzel roundabouts. We've had pedestrian safety days the last couple of years. So I think we're seeing some of the fruits of that labor in the number of those incidents decreasing. And then finally, what I did is look at some of the higher crash locations. And this year, working with East Central's mapping tool, as well as the WISDOT site, to kind of see where the top 10 crash locations were, and then if there was anything that we could do in those locations. And basically, the avenue of High Avenue, Wisconsin Street came up, and at that's kind of in the university area. So I guess that's not necessarily unexpected, just because of the students and unfamiliarity with the area and the more inexperienced drivers. It looks like most of those crashes were caused by, the failure to check their blind spots, failure to yield, to turning vehicle, a couple of rear ends by distracted driving. And then the Witzel and Sawyer area, which again is a high number of inexperienced drivers with the proximity to Lourdes and West in the university. So I would say that the two leading causes of the crashes this year is not unexpected. It's generally distracted driving and young inexperienced drivers making mistakes. And then finally, in conclusion, I looked at the effectiveness of some of our recently traffic safety measures. That Jackson and New York intersection, we don't have a full year of yet, but there were 7 crashes there in 2018, and about an average of 13 from 14 to 18. Since we put those no left turns during peak hour in July of 2018, there have only been 2 crashes since then, and they were both right at the end of the peak hours, about 7 p.m. I'll analyze that again once we get a full year's of data. However, it seems to have made an improvement. And then also at Murdoch in Wisconsin, I think the road diet's been really successful. There were only 3 crashes there in 18, and then there were also 3 rear end crashes that were near but not at that intersection. So that intersection used to always come up on the top, and it hasn't the last couple of years. So that shows that has made an impact.
To that specific intersection, Jim, and again, I don't know what the status is, but it was a few days ago that I went through there. Do we know what Public Works' timeline is at Murdoch in Wisconsin? Because the right lane's closed, which causes all kinds of problems trying to get through there.
Okay. I know they were doing some, I think
it comes up real fast.
Yeah, I know they're doing some
some
sewer relay work there, I believe. So I can check. I don't know off the top of my head. I'll check with our Public Works Director at our staff meeting tomorrow.
Just for future reference, if they're going to do stuff like that, which again, obviously has to be done, but signing should be in advance of the roundabout that you can't be in the outside lane.
Sure.
And go straight for very long.
Yep. Yep, that's good.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Collins, other than me, I guess, about the crash report?
Oh, yeah. On Knapp Street, by the church and all.
Yep.
They're dismantling that now. What was the outcome, or what was the purpose?
Left already, but so Kim left already, but with East Central's, what they did is they did a it's called a pop-up crosswalk or a pop-up project. So what they worked with the neighborhood association to put that up temporarily for a couple weeks, and then they had college students that were collecting the data to see how that affected traffic and the people walking and biking through the area. We don't have those results back yet because they just took it down, like you said, but that was the intent, is to see what those, so they did the Continental style crosswalk with the tape, and then they put basically simulated a bump out.
Yeah,
So we don't have those results back, but it was kind of a test project.
and why was that particular area picked?
The neighborhood association worked in conjunction with the East Central Planning Commission and the city. I'm not sure exactly why they picked that location, other than I know that there was one of the residents in that area does like a walking school bus, and that was one of the intersections she was interested in. So I wasn't involved in the selection of it. I mean, I'm not, I mean, just personally, I think there's nothing wrong with the idea. I wish it would have been a little busier location so we get a little better data, but, you know, that was the area they were interested in.
Anyone else?
If you could look at it, I've had several citizens call me, the intersection of Bone and Murdoch. You have a right turn, if you're going south on Bone Street, you can only turn right at the intersection or go straight. And more traffic going northbound is turning onto Murdoch, and it's backing up traffic on Bone Street. They're wondering why, if it couldn't have both lanes, you could go straight or turn right. So it'd be, if you're going south on Bone Street and you come up to Murdoch, currently you have to stay in the center lane to go straight.
Right.
And more cars are turning left onto Murdoch, and it's backing up the traffic because you can't go in the right lane and go forward. I know it's an accident issue,
Big time.
but at the same time, I think more cars are going straight than they are turning right. But
And the debate at the time when we discussed that was, do we make it right turn only or left turn only?
Right.
yeah.
And the consensus was make it a right turn only lane on the right.
But on the other, if you go out northbound, you can go in either lane. There's no designation.
But see, the geometry is different on the other side of the intersection because it's marked 2 lanes.
Correct.
On the north side of that intersection. On the south end of that intersection, it's 1 lane. So,
That's what I told them. I didn't know if there was history before I was on this.
yeah, well, we battled on that one for,
Okay. Quite a while.
oh, well.
Well, there you go.
I'll,
And the issue that came, I think this was one of my first years here, and the reason we did it, because people were calling complaining that cars in both lanes were going straight, and then the road narrows.
Right,
yeah, and there's
And
a
so that was
bottleneck.
creating a conflict point.
right. Oh, I agree. Okay.
So,
That's all I
I
got.
mean, the only other solution is a protected left.
Right.
I mean,
Designated
Arrow,
arrow.
yeah,
good old arrow.
but that requires new signal heads,
Yep.
which comes with a
Costs
pretty
money.
cost.
Yep. All right.
And that problem, I think, mostly exists during peak hour, obviously. The
Yeah.
rest of the day, it's not an issue.
Yeah, usually around 3, 4 o'clock.
Anyone else? I noticed there wasn't an issue for future agenda items on the agenda, but sounds like we might have actually already
Must have ran
accomplished
out of
it. Yeah. So,
Ran out of paper.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn unless.
Move to
someone-
adjourn.
something-
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.